So today we have another OSDT match between JRL and SingleThunder. We're both 4-0. JRL with a Whimsicott team. SingleThunder with a semi-trick room team, but interestingly it has a Spectre, which is not only rare, but usually has redirection to use Nasty Plot with. And we see the Celestial lead here, which is pretty good into these two Pokemon. Aside from a knockoff from Rilla, being able to remove the Power Herb. It's also otherwise actually pretty good into SingleThunder's whole team. Exception mainly being the Volcanion, but again, if it has Meteor Beam, then it could use it to hit that. The main thing SingleThunder could want here would be try and set Trick Room probably, but that's not really possible because of Incineroar having his own fake out. So either you trade fake outs or Celestial threatens the Diancie out this turn or next turn. Wow. SingleThunder just expects JRL to not go for the Flash Cannon, and he doesn't. So, good turn for SingleThunder there. He still is in a rough spot against the Celestial this turn, though. But it's possible he could go for something like Protect Diancie and switch to Volcanion. There's also the chance that JRL could cover that by hitting that slot, anticipating it, though. And SingleThunder just leaves the Diancie unprotected again. Parting shot isn't too surprising. covering the likely Volcanion switch there. Wow. So JRL did go for the Meteor Beam, suspecting the Volcanion switch, which SingleThunder correctly predicted by leaving his Diancie unprotected. But also, the Rillaboom turned out to be quicker, so it U-turned after the Meteor Beam, protecting the Volcanion as well. So that was a massive turn for SingleThunder. Because now that the Meteor Beam's used up and Dance is still alive, that's really big for him. He's got a lot of pressure under Trick Room here now. Diamond Storm and Heatwave should threaten a double knockout here. The only question really is if it's Wide Guard Celesteela that could slow this down. Goes for the Steam Eruption instead, so maybe Heatwave didn't kill, or Steam Eruption covered, switch to Zygarde or Nihilego there. The JRL predictably goes for the safe protect and switch to Feeny to help stall Trick Room turns. Does mean he won't be Wide Guard though. And still here, SingleThunder should be able to go for the same play and either KO the Celesteela or threaten it out. And Diance's looking in a pretty good position to be able to set Trick Room again after this one ends. Depending on what happens with Feeny. Nihilego is the sack, and Feeny reveals a support set with Nature's Madness. There's one last turn of Trick Room here. Celesteela should obviously look to protect here, and it'll threaten Diancie next turn. SingleThunder would like to bring out Rillaboom in other slot to fake out and set Trick Room, but it is only at 6%, so you can't really bring it in safely here on a hard switch. There's also nothing else that would really threaten the KO on Celesteela from there to help you set Trick Room either. But what you could just do instead is just attack with Diancie this turn in Volcanion, and then next turn possibly just protect Diancie and attack with Volcanion, because that's good into both of these Pokemon. JRL might opt to go for the Madness into Volcanion here. Very interesting switch to Landris there. Switching out the Volcanion to Pokemon, which it did pretty well into. The switch from JRL to Zygarde makes sense there since it resists Diamond Storm. I would imagine it lives the same eruption too. Also can't be burnt from terrain. And then it would be threatening 1,000 arrows knockout in both of them, with the madness hitting into the Volcanion. Now, though, I would imagine Zygarde still lives an Earth Power from this range and would threaten a double knockout. I'd suspect Fini may possibly want to switch here to Celesteela or Whimsicott as well. Celesteela being more safe. From SingleThunder's end, I think you may want to stack the Diancie and protect Landris here, possibly. I don't think you're getting out of this position against the Zygarde without at least losing one thing. And instead he actually opts to protect the Diancie and sack the Landris for damage on the Zygarde. And JRL stays in with the Fini to go for Icy Wind. Which, to be honest, I don't know what the Icy Wind covered there. I don't know if he thought Earth Power might have killed Zygarde. Even the Spectre, I imagine, must still outspeed these two at -1. But yeah, SingleThunder now goes to Rillaboom predictably. And you should be able to get Trick Room here again. Because of how good Zygarde is against everything but Rillaboom, yeah, JRL switches it out to save it for later. Also switches out Defini as well, so making sure Rillaboom didn't pick up a knockout with Glide there. But it does mean that it's sticking around for later, which could be important, getting off a Fake Out or Glide later on. And now Diancie is out in Trick Room again. And SingleThunder switches to Metagross, presumably covering an Encore from Whimsicott, which it does go for. So SingleThunder still looking very strong under Trick Room here. Celesteela also switched out on that last turn against Diancie and Rillaboom, which I can't say I completely understand. But I guess he was, yeah, I guess he actually is probably just expecting Volcanion switch there. Well, even then, Incineroar isn't necessarily the best thing to have against it. The situation is pretty rough at this point, though. Yeah, the Zygarde was a little bit too low. Both players using up the timer a lot this turn. I would say JRL is in the tougher spot here. SingleThunder's the one applying pressure here. I really don't like that protect with Volcanion. I don't know what you're fearing there. Like, what's the worst Incineroar could do with you? At worst, it lets you get off an attack, which is basically picking up a kill at this point. And Whimsicott isn't really doing anything to you either. But if anything, if the Whimsicott had stayed in, it could encore you into Protect on the next turn there. So I really don't like that Protect there. That was very passive. The Metagross also went for the Hammer Arm into Incineroar, which I think would have picked up the KO, but unfortunately missed, which is not great for SingleThunder. JRL in the Whimsicott slot went to Tapu Fini, which would have lived any hit from Volcanion. Maybe not if Metagross went for the Steel-type move into it. So JRL knocks out the Metagross. Volcanion knocks out Incineroar. And Fini gives a Madness onto Volcanion. Madness against the Volcanion does help, meaning that it should be in KO range for Zygarde, but it's still a massive threat to JRL's team at this point. Zygarde really only being the able thing, really being the only thing able to knock it out. And SingleThunder has Rillaboom for a glide, Spectrier to be faster, assuming there's no Tailwind or Trick Room, and then Diancie under Trick Room to deal with it. We see Celesteela and Rillaboom on the free switches. Can't say I fully understand going Rillaboom there, to be honest. Since the fake out is just going to be burnt into a likely double protect to stall Trick Room, or at least protect on the Celesteela and to threaten into the Fini slot anyways, that you could have done with, say, Diancie. Okay. So glide into the Fini. Oh yeah, well that makes sense from SingleThunder's point, I see now. Because with the glide on Fini, the single target Heat Wave kills Celesteela. Which I'm guessing JRL may have forgotten it would become single target and KO there. Since otherwise, I don't know why you wouldn't want to protect the Celesteela, but I guess you're probably going to lose there anyways. So SingleThunder picks up a 1-0 lead. SingleThunder definitely picked up a lot of early momentum on the first few turns with Diancie versus Celesteela, and also with Volcanion as well, in terms of Celesteela didn't land the Flash Cannon into Diancie, and it didn't land the Meteor Beam into Volcanion either, which just gave SingleThunder lots of room to get Trick Room up and start threatening stuff. And then SingleThunder did well to get Trick Room up a second time, and then after that, it's all but over. And we're still waiting for game 2. And there it is. Game 2 has started. JRL is using Rain. SingleThunder is using... I don't know how you would describe this. I don't think I've seen this before, but I imagine it has to be coaching. There is a notable lack of fire types or anything that is likely to have a fire type move. So it's really the Urshifu is the threat to the Ferrothorn here. If this was the other team with Porygon 2, which then usually has Iron Defense Ferrothorn, then that would be in a really good spot here. But this is likely not Iron Defense, which is a little weaker to the Urshifu, but still pretty good against this team overall. Interestingly, both teams have a Sarina, which is much rarer than the typical Rillaboom mirror. JRL's put timer on. SingleThunder still to move. And we see Zapdos Urshifu lead into Tapu Fini Zeraora. Very good lead for Zeraora here. Basically immune to anything the Zapdos can do, for the most part, and threatening the Urshifu. On the other hand, Tapu Fini is very much threatened by the Zapdos here. Zeraora could have Fake Out, but JRL does have the Sarine in the back, so Fake Out into Zapdos is pretty risky here to cover the Fini, because Urshifu could very easily go to Sarine here quite safely against these two. The Fini, I'd imagine, is looking to either protect or maybe go to Cube, and Zeraora maybe hit the Zapdos slot expecting an Urshifu switch, and then threaten the KO on next turn to keep Fini safe, potentially. Alright, Scarf Urshifu, so it goes for the U-turn into Zeraora, and Zapdos actually switches out to Sarina, which I find a little surprising, but I guess it makes sense. And the Ferrothorn comes out in the other slot, which covers a Moonblast, which SingleThunder does go for. So now JRL is in a very good spot with the two grass types here against these two. I don't imagine that SingleThunder's threatening a KO into Sarina with the double. So I think JRL just gets his pick of what to attack here. I would imagine doubling the 0 Earth slot with the Power Whip and Gyro Ball should pick up a KO against something, probably. Maybe not against the Mew. But otherwise, that's probably the best way to try and guarantee a single KO, as opposed to targeting each slot once, in which case you could run into switches into resists. Or actually, I think it might be Steel Roller instead of Gyro Ball, but basically the same thing anyways. Okay. And SingleThunder does go for the double into the Sarina, which goes for the U-turn into 0 Aura, further weakening it, and Power Whip knocks out the Feeny. Sarina being basically dead now, I don't think that's amazing for JRL, but he has removed the Feeny for it. Which, again, I don't know if that's worth it, because you do have the Sarina, the Ferrothorn, and the Zapdos to be able to deal with that. So I don't think the Feeny was the biggest threat worth going for that trade for. But I'm guessing you probably expected SingleThunder wouldn't stay in to go for the double into it there. And U-turn would have covered switch like Kern Black or Sarina there. Now the Mew comes out. Which, unless this actually has a fire move, doesn't threaten the Ferrothorn still. Even if it's Wisp, terrain is actually up. There is the possibility of Fake Out into the Urshifu slot from Mew to try and catch it with 0 Aura. That's one possibility, but risky because of the Sarine in the back. I don't believe U-turn the first time did enough damage to knock out there. Yeah. So maybe if it was a low roll into a high roll here, U-turn would knock out the 0 Aura, but I don't know about that. You could stay in and just like surging or close combat the 0 Aura. The main risk would be Psychic Mew knocking you out. So I don't think you would want to risk that. SingleThunder is the one getting low on time here though. JRL opts for the U-turn into the Mew, which makes sense, weakening it hopefully into the range of one of your stronger attacks from Kingdra or Zapdos for later. And he goes to Politoed, which could be Inga Fists, but it would live it typically. 0 Aura knocks off Ferrothorn's Assault Vest, and Ferrothorn goes for the knockoff into Mew, but just misses out on the knockout. Ferrothorn is getting lower, but still should be able to stomach any of these hits, even with the Assault Vest removed. maybe a knockoff in like Ice Beam or Earth Power might knock it out now, possibly. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't, though. If it doesn't, then I think JRL's still pretty good here. Well, he goes for the fists into Politoed anyways, which JRL switched to Sarina for the sack, which I think is a sensible choice. And JRL goes for the Steel Roller into Zero Aura, which means Mew's left standing, which has went for a nasty plot. Do have to say at this point, though, it does look like JRL is going to be able to stall out Tailwind and then most likely clean up with a combination of Kingdra, Zapdos, and Urshifu. This Ferrothorn's done a very good job so far of pressuring SingleThunder's team and wearing it down for its teammates. So Zapdos comes out. I would imagine this drops to +2 Ice Beam. But then Ferrothorn could knock it out. But on the other hand, I would imagine a double has to kill Ferrothorn here. And SingleThunder actually doubles the Zapdos slot, which is interesting. Maybe +2 Ice Beam wouldn't have killed there. Otherwise, I don't really understand the U-turn there into something that could protect. I think saving the Ferrothorn definitely makes some sense there. Politoed coming out when it wouldn't have been threatened by either of the likely moves there, Ice Beam and U-turn or possibly High Jump Kick. And then it would have been able to button out to something else. SingleThunder getting very low on time here. JRL switches out Zapdos, predictably, to save it for later, the very important Mon. And he goes to Ferrothorn, which does die to that double. And Politoed knocks out the Mew. So this is looking good for JRL, I have to say. One thing, though, is the rain situation. There's only one turn left, and the Politoed is out at the moment, which makes things a little tricky. Goes out to Kingdra. And Draco into the Kieran Black, which does barely live with presumably Assault Vest there. And Sarina goes for the Power Whip into Kingdra, which misses. So now both of these are at -1 from Icy Wind. So Kieran should outspeed both. Sarina should outspeed Kingdra, possibly Zapdos, depending on its speed. If Zapdos switches out to Politoed, though, then Kingdra should still outspeed these two with Swift Swim. I would definitely be looking at that play. Yeah, and JRL does go for it. Knocking out the Kyurem. Goes for the Power Whip again, but it doesn't even knock out the Kingdra. Looks like it was a roll. JRL switches out the Kingdra into Urshifu. And protects the Politoed, which is hit by the close combat anyways, and now gets a switch with eject button. With the Sarina goes for Power Whip into the Urshifu, which knocks it out. And now this should just be a double Hurricane. Guaranteed win for JRL here. I don't think there was a lot that SingleThunder could have done in those last few turns. I think JRL played this game quite well. JRL taking his time here, though. Does Hurricane from Zapdos not knock out Sarina here? Even if it's Assault Vest? And it does. I guess he may have been double checking the calcs there just to make sure. So that means we're going to game 3. Where I wonder if we'll see the common thing of where both players bring the teams that they won games 1 and 2 with. Still no game 3 up yet. And finally, we have game 3. And JRL does bring rain again, but SingleThunder brings a team that's not quite the same. This is a game 1 team. So I was only half right this time. SingleThunder's team, though, this looks like it has no speed control at all, which is a little suspect. I would suspect it could be a Scarfini because of that to help with the speed situation, but I still don't love no speed control. Another thing is there's only 2 water resists, which is not great when you're highly expecting JRL to bring rain again. And the Rillaboom is obviously a little boned by the Sarina, so that's not completely great either. So this very much looks like a situation where you could see Kingdra and Zapdos clean up late game, potentially. Parathorn again is quite good here. There is an Incineroar as to worry about, but you'd have all the rain teammates for that. Whoops. But outside of that, it really matches well into everything else, really. So I would say JRL definitely has a matchup edge here. And that seems to be reflected in the timer situation, where again he's putting the pressure on SingleThunder. And we see a Zapdos Urshifu lead into Nihilego Rillaboom. As we seen last game, it's Urshifu's Scarf, which means it will outspeed the Nihilego. And the Zapdos could very easily switch to Sarina to block a Fake Out or Grassy Glide here. Which is definitely the most obvious play to stop this Nihilego, since otherwise it could do something a little annoying. From SingleThunder's point of view, though, you have to expect that play. So if you're Woodhammer Rillaboom, you could use that and kill Urshifu here. If it does decide to stay in to surging the Nihilego, that would be one way to catch JRL out here. If you're knockoff, you could knock off the Urshifu as well, which is a lot less effective, but it does still mean that it would be slower than your Nihilego and Landorus then. And it also wouldn't have Aqua Jet because it is Scarf. In either case, I'd imagine you're looking to switch Nihilego to Fini as the safe option here. Although there is also the potential from JRL that he could just predict the Nihilego switch and stay in with Zapdos and Hurricane either slot. Or Thunder the Nihilego slot, expecting Fini in particular. We do see the expected Sarina switch. JRL goes for U-turn into the Rillaboom instead, which makes sense if you're expecting a likely Nihilego switch, but especially into Fini, because then you can't really do anything to it, so you might as well U-turn the Rillaboom. And SingleThunder goes to Metagross rather than Fini, which I find a little surprising since that doesn't really want to eat a Surging Strikes, but I guess if you're just going to say that maybe that's not so useful in this matchup against Rain, then you're covering a Zapdos attack there and not risking Fini, which could be important later on. Rillaboom goes for the U-turn, which works out well here, and Incineroar gets in a good spot here. Meaning this Therathorn is not in as nice a spot as it would like to be. Therathorn should easily be able to switch to one of the water types here, though. Sarina, depending on its speed, should be able to safely U-turn as well. Yeah, and it is faster than the Metagross and goes to Politoed. And the Therathorn actually stays in, because the Flare Blitz would be very risky there, giving up momentum if it does go into Kingdra or whatever is the obvious switch. So staying in with Ferrothorn there does work out. Even if it did go for the Flare Blitz, it would be in rain, so it wouldn't have knocked it out. And now, because of the parting shot, something that isn't Incineroar has to come out, meaning Ferrothorn has a lot of leverage this turn and next turn now. I would imagine it might be a knockoff into the Metagross this turn, and it is. And a crit. Metagross went for the Toxic into the Sarina, which you turned into Politoed, but I can't see Toxic being too useful because Politoed isn't going to be staying out for a significant amount of time. So I don't know if there was something better there you could have done. Like if you had Stealth Rock, I think that would have been better. You were getting U-turned into, so I don't know, switching would have necessarily been the best, but Toxic doesn't seem like it'll have an effect on the game most likely. It could potentially wear it down into range of an attack where it can't live and switch out with eject button, though, is the one thing. And obviously the main thing, as opposed to just straight up attacking, is it means it's not automatically switched out on that turn. Rillaboom hard switches to Incineroar. If you U-turned Politoed, that you would stay in because of how eject button works, and you could U-turn the Ferrothorn for sure there, but you would take Iron Barb's damage, which was deemed not worth it, considering how little you would do to Ferrothorn and it'd heal it back up anyways. And Metagross goes for Stealth Rock this turn, so it did have it. And Politoed goes for Scald, but doesn't knock out the Metagross. Now Incineroar is back in against the Ferrothorn here. And Metagross is threatening to just attack Politoed and force it out, which leaves Incineroar safe to go for a Flare Blitz into Ferrothorn here. But again, there's very much an obvious switch option from Fairthorn something else like Kingdra here for JRL, which I imagine he would go for this time because the Fairthorn is at -2 attack, so even if you do stay in on a parting shot, at that point it's not really worth it. And I would imagine SingleThunder should go for the parting shot here. And no, because he switches Metagross, he goes for the fake out to stop Politoed from scalding it there. But that just leads to JRL getting 2 big threats out pretty safely now. And he's putting on massive pressure here on SingleThunder. With the 2 water weaks against 2 water types. The Rillaboom's also already been worn down a little bit, so this is looking rough for SingleThunder. And he goes Feeny, which was definitely the safest Pokemon there, and tries to sack Metagross, but it actually dodges Muddy Water, which you have to say that seems like it's maybe not something that he wanted. Muddy Water and Thunder or Hurricane, depending on what kills, is the most obvious option. And then SingleThunder has the option of Protect and going to Rillaboom, possibly. But you could cover that by targeting the Metagross slot with Zapdos. Or even if it came out, you could just switch to Sariana anyways. And SingleThunder just lets the Feeny get knocked out. So this is looking extremely over now. As long as JRL is able to reposition here and doesn't miss an important Muddy Water or something, he should be good. Ferrothorn still at 100 HP definitely doesn't help SingleThunder here. This turn in particular is a little rough because he doesn't have Rain Up or Serena, so like he couldn't get both of them out at once to let Kingdra safely target Nihilego. Well, I believe it might live in Muddy Water from full anyways, possibly. And the Rillaboom reveals it is Wood Hammer and knocks out the Politoed, so Rain is on a timer here, but how few Pokemon SingleThunder has left, I don't think you're going to be able to stall it out into a win here. Kingdra should live a Glide, so I would imagine what you do is Hydro Nihilego hit and just kill something and then Hurricane the Rillaboom. Assuming Muddy Water doesn't kill, like I think. If you're SingleThunder, I think you have to go for the dodge here. Go for the dodge, target Zapdos with Nihilego, knock out Kingdra with the Rillaboom. Okay, and he just switches to Incineroar, which goes down. So this Rillaboom. And he says GG. And Nihilego does actually die. Maybe it's Life Orb that lives. And yeah, this is definitely a win at this point now. So JRL wins the final game and the set, despite SingleThunder taking the first game. But I think the team choice game 3 was definitely a mistake by SingleThunder there. If someone brings a team game 2 and wins, you need to be prepared for that team game 3. And this team was not prepared for that team, I have to say. And I don't love the no speed control anyways. But that is the only game for now, so I will see you later.